Hello there, Star Wars toy fans. This is Jim, and thank you again for stopping by my channel. So, as many of you know, I restore a lot of vintage toys. There's kind of a fine line between leaving them as is and then taking something that was really a piece of junk and trying to make it useful again, trying to bring it back to life. And so there are a couple of figures that you see on my desk there that had some loose limbs. Now, the X-Wing pilot there, I customized and made it into a Theron net, but he still had loose limbs. And then the Ewok there, I'm going to plan on repainting and tightening up the limbs and then giving it to my son for Christmas. So I thought I'd show you maybe perhaps an avenue that you had not thought of that might be better than what I've seen out there. Now, I've tried the Teflon tape idea out there. Dave at Toy Polloi promotes that, and it is really a fantastic and quick solution, much faster than what I'm going to suggest today. I did that with my son's Wampa that I purchased for him Christmas of 2020, and he plays with it a lot. It's a vintage Kenner Wampa, and that Wampa, the Teflon tape's coming out, so it's going to have to be redone again. So I thought, well, what if there was a permanent solution? What if you could glue some plastic in there? So this is where I'm going to take you folks on this little trip. Now, as a model builder of scratch, I scratch build a lot of models and then restore quite a few things. I have here some strip styrene from Evergreen Scale Models. And you can see it's a 0.010 thousandths of an inch, and which would be like 0.25 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters. And I've got various strips, and I also have rods. And so this is what I am using to stiffen up the limbs. So depending on what you may need, so here is a strip and here is a rod, and it just kind of depends on the figure and how tight the joints are and how much room there is in there. So this is an Ewok limb that I have already applied that to, and I used the more flat strip. On a Theron net, I also used the flat strip, and it's very, very stiff. Now this limb is quite loose, and so I'm going to just take a moment to go ahead and restore some of these and show you how I do it. So we'll take a look here at this arm that just flops up and down. And so a couple tools that you're going to need. You're going to need, number one, a hairdryer. You're going to also need some Plasti-Weld. Now, you can use what I've got from Testors, or it's a liquid cement meant for styrene plastic. This is Plasti-Weld here that I got at Hobby Lobby that's almost all gone. And so what that Plasti-Weld is going to do is it's actually going to melt the plastic to I think this is ABS plastic. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely not styrene because this has no effect on the figure's plastic. Now, some of the Star Wars toys do use styrene plastic, so you want to be careful where you use that. And then, of course, this is my childhood Ewok, and I'm going to be using that as a template in order to paint this and get it back up to snuff. So let's go ahead and try using some rod here on that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hairdryer. Get it nice and flexible. And you have a limited amount of time with which to do that. Now I'm going to shove that into the limb, and I've probably already used up my time. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to warp it again. You may want to have a pair of bent nose pliers in order to shove that in. And there we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of that liquid cement and I'm going to just kind of dribble it in there. It's going to have no effect on the action figure whatsoever. But what it's going to do is it's going to melt that in. So I'm going to remove that limb, and that's going to smush it down. It is so thin a plastic that it will literally smush into place. And you'll notice that it's already broken off. Okay. Now, I'm not terribly impressed with that right now. So I'm going to try the strip here and see if that does any better. Okay, so we heat that up. I'm going to shove that into place. Looks like that's going to do really nicely. Now you want to be careful not to heat up your plastic too much on the figure. If you do, then you'll want to wait till it finally cools off. You can use a ice pack to also kind of speed things up. Okay, so we're going to use a hairdryer on it. Wrap that around. Okay, now I'm going to use the liquid cement for styrene plastic. I'm going to smush that in. Now take my X-Acto knife and trim that back to where it is hiding behind the joint. So we're just essentially putting plastic in there. And that this is so thin that it will smush up nicely and provide kind of a shim for the limb. Now we'll just let it dry, and I guarantee you it will stiffen up. This leg here is really quite loose, and this one I have not done. This one I have already done, and it's quite stiff. So we'll just let it sit. This arm's in pretty good shape, so I'm just gonna leave that. But anyway, that's it. That's all there is to it. So, and make sure that you screw the cap on these. They evaporate quickly. You can lose half a bottle overnight. So again, the numbers that you may want to consider purchasing, you can get these through Hobby Lobby. Number 100, that's a real thin strip, 0.25 millimeters. Number 8104, and that's 0.28 millimeters. And this is the flat strip. And then the rod here, 0.5 millimeters, and that's number 218. All these are from Evergreen Scale Models out of Woodinville, Washington. So I hope that gave you some ideas on how to tighten the joints on your figures. And if you take a look at that, let's see, here we are. So it's in the camera. You can see it's pretty well hidden. Take care, and we'll see you in another video.